Picture this. A grand wedding hall. Soft golden lights. 300 guests in their best clothes, holding glasses of wine, smiling, waiting for the toast. And then, in front of every single one of them, the groom's mother stands up and demands 51% of the bride's company. Not a gift. Not a blessing. A takeover. My name is Claire. And that day, the day that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, turned into the day I learned exactly who my new family really was. If you think weddings are about love, stay with me till the end of this story. Because what happened next will show you that sometimes the truest test of love isn't the vows. It's what happens when greed shows its face in front of everyone. This is the story of how one woman built an empire from nothing, fell in love with the wrong family, and on her own wedding day, found the courage to take it all back, with one microphone and 11 words that changed everything. Let's begin from where it all started. Built from nothing. 5 years before that wedding, I was nobody special. I worked 2 jobs, barista in the morning, freelance designer at night, saving every spare coin into a notebook I called my someday fund. I didn't come from money. My parents worked hard their whole lives just to keep our small home standing. I grew up watching my mother count coins at the kitchen table, and I promised myself one day I would build something that nobody could ever take away from me. So I did. I started a small skincare brand for my apartment. No investors. No rich uncle. Just me, a laptop, and a stubborn refusal to give up. I mixed the first products in my own kitchen. I packed orders myself at midnight. I answered every customer message personally, even when I was exhausted, even when I wanted to cry from how tired I was. Slowly, painfully slowly, it grew. 1 year in, I had a small team of 5. 2 years in, 50. By the time I turned 29, my company, Lumiere Naturals, was valued at over $40 million. I owned 100% of it. Every single share was mine. I built it brick by brick, sleepless night by sleepless night. That's when I met Daniel. Daniel was charming, kind, at least that's what I believed back then. He worked in finance, came from what looked like a proper family, the kind that hosted dinner parties and talked about legacy and tradition. His mother, Vivian Dillon, was the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned it. Elegant, sharp-tongued, always smiling, but never warmly. In the beginning, Vivian was sweet to me. She'd call me darling, compliment my designer handbags, ask about my company with wide, interested eyes. I should have noticed it sooner, that her interest wasn't in me. It was in what I had built. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? I fell for Daniel. He proposed on a beach at sunset, and I said yes without a single doubt in my heart. What I didn't know was that behind closed doors, the Dillon family had already started planning. Not a wedding, a merger. Looking back now, there were warning signs everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. 3 months before the wedding, Vivian invited me to lunch. Just the 2 of us. She ordered champagne before I even sat down. "Claire, darling," she said, swirling her glass. "You know, when you marry into this family, everything becomes family business. We believe in sharing, in unity." I smiled, thinking she meant something simple, something warm. "Of course," I said. "Family is everything to me too." She smiled back, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone calculating numbers behind their eyes. A week later, Daniel asked me, almost casually over dinner, "Hey, have you ever thought about restructuring the company? Maybe adding family members to the board? It would make things easier, for the future." I laughed it off. "Daniel, I built this myself. I'm not handing out shares like party favors." He didn't push it that night. But I noticed his jaw tighten. I noticed the silence that followed. 2 weeks before the wedding, my lawyer called me, with concern in her voice. "Claire, has anyone from Daniel's family asked you to sign anything? Any prenup changes? Any new partnership documents?" I told her no, but I made a mental note to be careful. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until later, was that Vivian had already been meeting with her own lawyer, drafting documents, preparing for a moment she believed would catch me completely off guard, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, too embarrassed to refuse in public. She thought I would fold under pressure on my biggest day, just to avoid a scene. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Section 4. The betrayal. 51%. The wedding day arrived. The hall was breathtaking. White flowers, golden lights strung from the ceiling, 300 guests dressed in their finest. I walked down the aisle in a dress I had dreamed about since I was a little girl, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. The ceremony went beautifully. Vows were exchanged. Rings were placed. Daniel looked at me like I was the only person in the room, and I believed every second of it. Then came the reception. The toasts began. Daniel's father spoke first, short, polite, forgettable. Then Vivian stood up, microphone in hand, and the room quieted to listen to the mother of the groom. She began warmly. "Claire, when I first met you, I knew you were special. A hardworking young woman, a self-made success." Polite applause followed. Then her tone shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. "As Claire and Daniel begin this new chapter together," she continued, "our family believes deeply in unity, in sharing success as one. So today, as a symbol of that unity, we are asking, as a wedding gift to this marriage, that 51% of Lumiere Naturals be transferred into a joint family trust, managed by the Dillon family, to ensure the future of this union is protected for generations to come." The room went dead silent. 300 people, frozen, glasses halfway to their lips, all staring between me and her. She wasn't asking. She had structured it as an announcement, like it was already decided, like I had no choice but to nod along in front of everyone, trapped by the weight of public expectation. I felt my heart pounding. My hands were ice cold. Beside me, Daniel said nothing. He just looked down at his wine glass. That silence from him told me everything. He knew. He had known the whole time. This wasn't a spontaneous request from an overstepping mother-in-law. This was a planned ambush. They had waited until I was standing in front of everyone I knew, in the most emotional, vulnerable moment of my life, believing I would be too afraid of embarrassment, too in love, too overwhelmed to say no. They had badly underestimated me. I smiled. For a few seconds, I just stood there. The whole room was watching me, waiting to see how the bride would react. And then, something inside me shifted. The fear melted away, replaced by something colder, clearer. Clarity. I smiled. Not the nervous, awkward smile people expected. A real, calm, confident smile. The kind that comes when you finally understand exactly what's happening and exactly what you're going to do about it. I stepped forward. I reached out my hand toward Vivian. "May I?" I asked, gesturing to the microphone. She hesitated for half a second, clearly not expecting this, but handed it over, perhaps assuming I was about to graciously accept, to keep the peace, to avoid a scene in front of everyone. I held the microphone, looked around the room at every face turned toward me, took a breath, and spoke. "Thank you, everyone," I said, my voice steady. "Thank you for being here, on what I thought was going to be the happiest day of my life." I paused. "This wedding is canceled." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel's face went pale. Vivian's smile cracked into shock. "And furthermore," I continued, "I'm firing the entire Dillon family, every single one who currently holds a position, a consultancy contract, or a board seat connected to Lumiere Naturals. Effective immediately." The room exploded into murmurs, gasps, whispered questions. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Claire, what are you doing?" I pulled away calmly. "What I should have done the moment your mother started planning to steal my company, behind my back." How I found out. Let me take you back 2 weeks before the wedding, to the night everything changed, the night I discovered the truth. It started with a misplaced phone. Daniel had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered, and it buzzed with a message preview from his mother. I wasn't trying to snoop. I genuinely wasn't that kind of person. But the message preview was visible right there on the screen. Lawyer confirmed the trust paperwork. She won't say no in front of everyone. Make sure the toast happens before the cake cutting. My stomach dropped. I picked up the phone. Yes, I admit it, I opened it because something told me I needed to know. The passcode was our anniversary date. I knew it without even trying. What I found was worse than I imagined. There were weeks of messages between Daniel and Vivian. Plans. Strategy. Lines like, she's too in love to fight back at the wedding, and once the shares move to the trust, we control the board majority within 6 months, and the one that broke my heart completely. Don't worry, I'll handle Claire. She trusts me. I sat on our bathroom floor that night, phone in my shaking hands, and I cried. Not loud sobs, quiet, hollow tears, the kind that come when something inside you breaks slowly instead of all at once. The man I was about to marry had been planning, with his mother, to take my company away from me, using our wedding day as the perfect cover, the perfect trap. I had a choice that night. I could call off the wedding immediately, privately, quietly. Or I could let them believe their plan was working and prepare my own response. I chose the second option, because if they were going to use my wedding day as their stage, I was going to use it as mine, building my own trap. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Patricia, the same woman who had warned me weeks earlier. I told her everything. She didn't look surprised. Claire, families like this, they've done this before, with other people in other situations. You need to move fast and move smart. Together, we built a plan. Quiet, careful, devastating. First, we confirmed that the shares of Lumiere Naturals were 100% in my name, fully protected, with no legal pathway for any family trust to take effect without my direct signature. The wedding announcement Vivian planned had zero legal power. It relied entirely on social pressure, on me feeling too embarrassed to refuse in public. Second, I discovered that Daniel's father and Vivian's brother, and even Daniel himself, held paid advisory positions connected loosely to my company, positions I had naively allowed when we got engaged, thinking it was a gesture of including family. These were the positions I would terminate. Third, and this part mattered most to me, I needed proof, real proof, that this was planned, premeditated, calculated, not some emotional misunderstanding I could later be accused of overreacting to. I forwarded the messages to my own email, backed them up, printed copies, gave a sealed envelope to Patricia for safekeeping. Fourth, I decided I would not cancel the wedding privately. I would let it happen, let them set their trap, and spring my own at exactly the moment they thought they had won. It would have been easier to simply call Daniel and end things quietly over the phone. No one would have blamed me. But I wanted them to understand, fully, completely, in front of everyone who mattered to them, their friends, their business partners, their entire social circle, exactly what kind of people they had chosen to be. I wanted the consequence to match the betrayal. So I smiled through the rehearsal dinner. I smiled through the final dress fitting. I let Vivian believe, right up until the moment she took that microphone, that her plan was working perfectly. Back to the wedding hall. Back to that frozen moment. After I announced the wedding was canceled and the entire Dillon family was fired, the room was in complete chaos. Some guests had their phones out, recording. Others were whispering urgently to each other. Daniel's father stood up, red-faced, shouting something about this being inappropriate. Vivian's face had gone from shock to fury. You can't do this. This is humiliating. Think about what people will say. I turned the microphone back toward her, calm as still water. What will they say, Vivian? That a woman refused to hand over her life's work because her future mother-in-law tried to steal it on her wedding day? I think they'll say, I made the right choice. I addressed the room directly. I want to apologize to everyone here for the shock of what just happened. Many of you traveled far, took time off work, bought gifts for a celebration that, as of 2 weeks ago, I discovered was never built on honesty. I held up my phone. 2 weeks ago, I found messages between my fiancé and his mother planning to use this wedding, this exact moment, in front of all of you, to pressure me into signing over 51% of the company I built from nothing. From 2 jobs and a notebook full of saved coins, to a company worth millions, built with my own hands, my own sleepless nights, my own sacrifices. Gasps again. I could see some of Daniel's own relatives looking at him in disbelief, clearly unaware of the plan. I'm not destroying this family's reputation out of spite, I continued. I'm simply refusing to be the quiet woman who signs away everything because she's scared of an audience. I built my life with my own two hands, and I will not hand it to people who only valued me for what I owned, not who I am. I looked at Daniel directly. His eyes were glassy, his face pale. Daniel, I loved you. I really did. But you let your mother turn my wedding day into a business negotiation, and you said nothing because some part of you agreed with the plan. That tells me everything I need to know about the man I almost married. I set the microphone down gently on the table, took off the wedding ring, placed it beside the microphone, and walked out of the hall, head high, heels clicking against the marble floor, 300 eyes following my every step. Section 9. The Aftermath. When the truth spreads. Within hours, videos from the wedding had spread across social media. Guests who had recorded the chaos for their own memories posted clips online, and the story exploded. Headlines like, "Bride fires entire in-law family at her own wedding," trended for days. People reacted in every way imaginable. Some called me cold. Some called me a hero. But overwhelmingly, once the full story came out, the messages, the plan, the betrayal, public opinion shifted entirely in my favor. Business partners of mine reached out with support. Several reporters asked for interviews, which I mostly declined, except for one honest conversation with a respected business journalist, where I told my story calmly, without anger, just facts. Daniel tried calling me for weeks. Messages of apology, explanations, promises that it wasn't what it looked like. But the messages I had, his own words, planning the ambush, left no room for misunderstanding. There's a difference between a mistake and a plan. What he did was a plan. Vivian, meanwhile, found herself facing consequences far beyond a cancelled wedding. Word of her scheme spread through her own social and business circles. Two business partnerships she relied on quietly distanced themselves from her, unwilling to be associated with someone who had attempted something so calculated and public. Her reputation, the very thing she seemed to value above honesty, crumbled under the weight of her own ambition. As for the company, Lumiere Naturals remained entirely mine. Untouched, unshaken. If anything, the public attention brought a wave of new customers who admired a woman who refused to be pressured into giving up what she built. Within 6 months, the company's valuation had grown even further, not because of the controversy itself, but because the story reminded people of something simple, that hard work, when protected fiercely, eventually pays for itself in ways money alone never could. Section 10. Reflection. What I learned. People sometimes ask me if I regret how I handled that day, whether I should have called things off privately, quietly, without the public spectacle. I always give the same answer, no, because some lessons need witnesses. Vivian believed that public pressure would force me into silence. She believed love, embarrassment, and social expectation were stronger than my self-respect. She was wrong, and she needed to learn that lesson in the exact setting she tried to use as her weapon. I think about my mother, counting coins at our kitchen table all those years ago, and I think about the version of me that started this company with nothing but a laptop and stubborn hope. That version of me worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to ever let anyone, family, fiancé, or otherwise, take it away through manipulation disguised as tradition. If there's one thing I want anyone watching this to take away, it's this. Love should never require you to shrink yourself, to silence yourself, or to hand over what you built just to keep the peace. Real love supports your success. It doesn't conspire to take it from you. And if someone, anyone, tries to use a moment meant for celebration as a stage for manipulation, you are allowed to take that stage back. You are allowed to speak your truth, even if the room goes silent first. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't staying quiet to avoid embarrassment. It's standing up, taking the microphone, and telling the truth, even when 300 people are watching. Especially when 300 people are watching. Today, I run my company with the same passion I started with. I've since found genuine relationships, friendships, partnerships, and yes, eventually love again, built on honesty instead of hidden agendas. The scars from that day faded, but the lesson never did. You can build an empire from nothing, but protecting it, protecting yourself, sometimes takes more courage than building it ever did. And on that day, in that wedding hall, I finally understood. I didn't lose a wedding. I saved my entire future.
The end.